Have you ever wondered what life must be like for an empty chip packet? Drifting on the breeze with little concern for its destination, for that always takes care of itself. Sometimes it may get caught in a bush or snagged in a fence, but soon enough the wind shifts and away it goes again, heading to somewhere else. There are people who can well relate to life as an empty packet of chips. Our story begins here, a faraway land on a vast continent where this wind-driven piece of detritus wound up after a good solid gust. Upon arrival, we find the land to be occupied by a lot of quite friendly folk, in a variety of colourful garb, or lack thereof. Another striking feature are the creatures of the wilds, some which look incredibly dangerous, such as this fierce fat-necked lizard. There are angry-looking dog-like beasts, and cats that eat things a lot bigger than mice. We see cute little monkeys, the cantankerous rhinoceros, and I still haven't worked out what that thing is. Quite quickly I find myself falling in with a tank, a giant behemoth of nuts, bolts and steel called M77200P, a partnership lasting over half a decade. Together we would travel from the southern cities to beaches, deserts and sweltering jungles, and high into the frigid lands where humans shouldn't be. Early into our collaboration, our team expands to 3, with the addition of another wanderer who seems to only concern themselves with their destination upon arrival. The choice to hang out with us surely indicates she's a few sandwiches short of a picnic, but we're not to question our good fortune and choose to roll with it. Complicating matters are a number of reckless individuals who've decided it's a good idea to pile on the back of our motorised juggernaut and venture off into the great unknown. From the land of fine wines to towering sandhills, then onwards to endless inland swamps infested with all manner of terrifying monstrosities. A torrent cascades into a bottomless crevasse, inspiring the deluded to leap from a bridge in an attempt to fly like birds. Along the way we stop at a variety of supermarkets and gas stations, finding open areas to camp the night before moving on again the following day. Over the course of our journeys we made many friends, in all shapes and sizes. The roads are perilous at best, with more than a few reminders of the dangers of poor conditions, speed and lack of attention. In some cases, our team is able to assist. That is the least of our troubles. There are places where the main roads devolve into little more than giant ruts enclosed by thick, oppressive, bug-filled jungle. Daunting even to a dedicated off-road vehicle, these conditions pose significant challenges to our colossal chariot. Improvements to allow passage need be made by hand with picks and shovels and force of will. Despite our best efforts, things turn to shit quite quickly and we sink axle deep into the slick muck, where rescue is our only solution. To add to our woes were numerous roadside running repairs. After what feels an eternity, we break free of the tropical steam bath and re-emerge into the desert again, following a mighty watercourse in whatever direction it might be heading. In close proximity, strange, once pointy-topped ancient buildings are encountered, growing from the dry sand and rock. A river spills out into an enormous lake that needs be crossed by a slow ferry that chugs its way over to an ancient civilization resting on the banks of our river re-emergent. It is here we find even more bigger, pointy-top structures towering over a busy and sprawling metropolis. From here, monuments, temples, forts and castles become a reoccurring theme, testimony to the long standing of human occupation of the region. It's far from where we started, when the engines finally shut down on the edges of a really big place called Europe. Throughout the course of these many journeys, I acquired many names. In the bustling fish markets, I was known as Richard. Others called me Mzungu, Hey You, and Give Me Money. However, my favourite was bestowed upon me in a border town somewhere between a very big hill and a huge freshwater lake by a currency facilitator named Mr. Cool. An honourable and trustworthy character, quite refreshing for someone in his line of work. I never knew his real name, and he never knew mine. To him I was Mr. Grevison, and I was delighted. I always knew that somehow, somewhere, to someone or something, I was destined to pass that name on. Good, we're good, we're on. All right, keep cranking that handle, Cricket. That's a great job. And focus, almost, no, yep, that's good, all right. Forgotten what I was gonna say now. Oh, it's not what I was gonna say. It's what I was gonna do. Okay, 3, 2, 1. That's a beautiful thing. Yeah, no oil leaks. Or there is an ooze. There's a bit of an ooze. I'm going to waffle on concerning things I know little about, which is fairly standard for this channel, so we're staying well within our comfort zone. None of my gauges are working. The amp meter was not hooked up when we received the truck with the V8 in it, and it's not hooked up now. That's a potential problem, so we're off to a good start already. I have encountered information that says that the amp meters don't work that well with the higher powered alternators, and you're better off getting a aftermarket voltmeter. If you know any different, then feel free to chime in. We're all ears. My fuel gauge, although that initially passed the test, it in practice is not working at all. So we've swapped it out with a Series 2A sender. Now 2As were a negative earth vehicle. This one's been converted to that. And what's happening now, when we turn the key on, it jumps up to some random position on the gauge and then starts pulsing. Just like a medically induced individual at a doof concert. If you don't know what that is, then you can check me out on TikTok. Ah, shit. I'm not on TikTok. There's some age appropriate activities for a middle-aged man, and that's not one of them. Now, as for our temperature gauge, with the key on, the needle begins to move slowly towards the hot position. And when the engine's running, it does so rapidly, even though we know that the engine isn't hot. If we disconnect the lead to the sender, then the needle begins to revert back down to cold. That's normally indicative of a faulty sender. But I'm also wondering if it's an incompatibility with the gauge. Something else that the fuel gauge and the temperature gauge share in common is a voltage regulator. And I think we should also test that. So we have our original voltage regulator here, and it says top up the top there, so I'm assuming it has to be aligned. So we're going to plug power in. And ground the chassis of the unit, and we'll connect our battery. Get our voltmeter out, orientate our thingamajig, and check its output voltage. all over the place. So we have a new one here from O'Reilly's Auto Parts. It cost a whopping $50, and we'll plug power into that. And then we'll ground the chassis. Oh, that's a fuse blowing. That's buggered straight out of the box. Okay, next we have our another one from Rover's North. So we'll supply that one with power. Ground the chassis. Connect the battery. And there we have the 10 volts we require to use the gauge. We'll install that. Now for our oil pressure gauge. What we see on the top of the housing is a sender that controls our low oil pressure light, but I want to install a hose that goes from there to the back of the gauge. Now on the bottom of our sender, the thread is a weird Whitworthy thing, and I'm finding it hard to get a match. To be able to install the hose, we need an adapter like what you see down here, but I would like to keep the low oil pressure light as well. So it's a case of not seeing the forest through the trees. For on my search, I eventually came back to John Craddock and Rover's North, and they have this thing right here. It's a T-piece, perfect. The male thread is a weird Whitworthy thing that'll screw into our housing. On the top, allows us to screw in our sender for the light. And then the other port is a 1/8 NPT thread, which are widely available, and we can screw in our adapter, as we see there. Now it's which hose we're going to use, because they do have different connections. The white hose has a flat connection that attaches to the adapter, as you see. The black hose has one of them, but it also has a conical one that attaches to this adapter, as you can see there. Now we have both. But as the back of the gauge has a flat connection, we're just going to run with this adapter right here and see how that works. Okay, let's turn the key on. Fuel gauge is holding steady. No duffing. Oh, the temperature gauge may be moving. Let's see. Oh, oil pressure. Hey, look at that. That's good. Temperature gauge is... I think the temperature gauge might be moving, but let's see if this truck does the same. Alright, I think we'll start off with second load. Hidden bus, a little shorter shank. Okay, we're going to start off in high range. This is awesome. Well, the temperature gauge is already hot. Now I do have the hubs locked in, even though we're in two-wheel drive. When we redid the diffs, they were all good as far as their tolerance goes, but they were a little crusty. They could really use a good splash around. Now this engine is pre-broken in for us. It went onto a dynamo, so although we still have to take it a little easy, we just can't go doing any hooning, you know, it pretty much is a plug and play unit. All right, we're already at the letterbox. Brakes seem to work, that's a bonus. This is awesome. It's a 5-year project. Finally driving the damn thing. It runs a lot smoother than I was expecting. This thing's really good. Okay, let's get this back into the workshop and we'll sort out our temperature gauge. Now when I purchased the gauge, it did say it requires this special Smith's sender to accompany it. So I have that here as well as a few adapters and so forth to facilitate its installation. Before we get too excited, I'd like to test our new sender and see how it affects the gauge. The engine's still warm, so we should exercise a little caution removing the cap. Now we can connect our new sender and chuck it in the drink. And with the engine running, the needle holds its position, an auspicious sign. Now to swap the sender out, of course, we're going to have to drain the coolant. And we want to use a clean container and a funnel because we want to capture it and reuse it. So we don't want to spill, oh shit. Okay, we got most of it. Then, of course, we have to extract our original sender. And then we put in our adapter and connect all that and install our new one. Then we'll re-plug it in and replace the coolant. Righto, now with our sender swapped out, let's have a look. So far so good. Alright, we'll take it for another test drive and see what happens. Now we'll go to high range. Oh. So the fuel gauge, we topped the tank up and the fuel gauge is now reading empty. So it's kind of, looks like it's opposite to what it should be. Well, literally straight out the gate, I can see the temperature gauge is doing pretty much what it should be doing, or what I would expect it to. So instead of doing the same drive as we did before, I think we'll maybe take a little tour of the local area, a sedate country drive, if you will. Take this turn here. Be back. Cricket, you got to stay there. So this trail is going to take us down into what's called Gillies Gulch, named after a deer that comes back here every year to give birth to fawns. You're seeing here a picture of her last summer with Thistle and Twig, and they're back with her now this year, and they're almost a year old already. That's the gulch. We've got a bit of a climb to get out of the place though. It's a little steep. That pond we see over yonder is quite an exciting place. In it are mainly bluegill and bass. And this time of year, the big females find a spot in the weeds with their paramours for breeding purposes. And then later, in late spring or early summer, you get these large bait balls form. And their parents are somewhat cannibalistic, so helps keep the population in control. The cattails surrounding the pond, they make a great nesting site for birds. You've probably heard the raucous noise outside the workshop. That belongs to a combination of red-winged and tricoloured blackbirds who they reside in amongst those cattails. In addition to that, you'll get a variety of ducks, and you'll get Canada geese, coots, grebes, gallinules, and the occasional Virginia rail. Not to forget bullfrogs, turtles, and Miguel the muskrat. Alright, up ahead's the outlet to the pond. It's quite rocky, it's a bit tight. I think we'll be fine. Go down this way though. Well, we've got another creek to cross, and we do so on what's called the Rickety Bridge. Don't be too concerned if it appears we're not closing the gates behind us. That's simply irresponsible editing. We go past the cattle yards. Excuse me, ladies. The calves are dropping this time of year. There's the herd's expanded by double. Now we're getting out into the wild country. So what we're seeing over there is called the island or the bass pond. And in addition to the usual suspects, there's also black crappie in there, which by all accounts are quite a good eating fish. Catch them on woolly buggers on the fly line. Okay, so coming up here is the outflow for the bass pond. It's a little bit tricky, muddy and steep. We'll take it slow. Wasn't too bad. This little turn off here will take us down into the lower fields. Some of these gates have seen better days. Alright, so we've got our steepest hill to climb. It's a bit wet and slippery, so should be a good test for our brand new tyres. With all the grass growing, it's a little hard to see the track sometimes. I've got a tight turn coming up here, we'll have to take it wide. Now this is the Oak Forest Knoll. It's a quiet, shady spot, good for some tranquil reflection. If you're into that sort of stuff. Hey cricket, nothing wrong with a little tranquil reflection. I can barely say that word. We're about to leave the forest and descend. It's early spring and a lot of wildflowers are appearing. We've got fiddlenecks, butter and egg, goldfields, baby blue eyes, sanicle, trifolium, lupin, and California poppy. And that's just to name a few. We need to pay attention up here. We've got a tight, tricky spot squeezing between a fence and a cliff. So this trail's taking us down to the main creek. The location we're at's called the Sand Flat Ford, and the ramp out of the river was made by cows, so they had little regard to the fact there's a big oak tree right at the top of it, so the ascent might be a little tricky.
nearly wiped out the bumper on that tree. Wouldn't have been a good look on the first test drive, would it?
Got some exciting wildlife around here. We've got opossums, skunks, raccoons, bobcats, grey fox, coyotes. There's some of the more sinister stuff, however, you'll find up there in the hills. So cricket calls this place Jibita Jibwa's Waterhole, named after a fictional character that doesn't appear to even exist fictionally. There was no further clarification on that. So although it is only a small waterhole, it is quite nice for, you know, a wallow. But it's also an ephemeral watercourse, meaning it will dry up and there's only a narrow window of opportunity between swimmable conditions and it being a skanky little puddle. But there are fish in here, mainly bass and what look like squawfish. Now as the watercourse dries, their future looks quite bleak, and I've always thought I'll come down and rescue the fish. And get down here and they're all gone. I don't know where they go. It's like, it's a mystery. I'm going to need to cross the creek again, and coming up is what's called Bell Scrimmels Ford. Now nobody knows who Bell Scrimmels is or was. It's just another mystery in the madness. Well, I have to ask, Cricket, do you have anything to do with it? The thing that makes this crossing treacherous are the rocks, and even more so when the water's flowing, because you can't see them. Cricket's already swam across. She knows this one. Those clouds are coming in fast and they're getting thick. What's going on up there? Is that a fair damsel looking for a lift? Jump in, you saucy minx.
Hey, can I get in?
always trust Land Rover to be the pinnacle of luxury. What do you think, Wilms?
I mean, honestly, it is more comfortable than I expected it to be.
Well, there we have it. I brought Summer and Cricket up to a lofty perch overlooking the valley, next to what somebody's been using as a rubbish dump down there. Now, with all that said and done, the clouds are moving in. It looks like we've got a storm, so perhaps we'll head back down the hill and test the brakes.
You've tested the brakes, right?
A little bit. There we have it. Another one of life's many chapters comes to a close. Where we go from here is anybody's guess. We don't have much in the way of a strategy or a plan. In fact, it could be said our direction of travel is greatly influenced by the shifting winds. Not unlike, an empty packet of chips.